Celtics Beat is brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of the CLNS Media Network.
All right, well, let's do it. We have to do it, right? It's a new edition of Celtics Beat. We're coming at you twice a week, thanks to our great sponsors. And in light of the fact that we are sponsored by a sports book, a gambling company, I'm tempted to just get into what a bath I took today.
Nobody wants to hear about how terrible you are at gambling, Kaufman.
Nope, no.
That's why the people are here.
Not terrible at gambling. Bad
Is this
beats.
therapy for you?
Bad beats were the story of today, but that's okay. We're not the people out there. I reckon there are forums for that. This is not that. This is not why people come to this show. They want us to bitch and moan about the Celtics or maybe try and make people feel a little bit better. They do not care about my bankroll. So that's fine. I acknowledge all of that. Adam Kaufman, Evan Valenti is back with us. We're staying in the heavy family. We had Sean Devaney on a couple of days ago, and here we've got Steve Bulpett with us. Of course, he has covered the beat for as long as anybody in this market and doing so to the highest of levels. So the most important insights that we can offer. And guys, of course, the Celtics, anyone who's listening knows this, the C's, despite a fourth quarter surge and really a game that I saw our guy John Zanis put, it's funny how the Celtics in a game they had no business winning somehow found a way to blow it. They nearly won. They lost in overtime. It was 116-115 in Philadelphia. So now this second round set is a best of three instead of a 3-1 series lead going back to Boston, which I truly did believe it was going to be. But for whatever reason, whether it was Jason Tatum's very slow start, tough first half for him. It didn't no points or hardly any points before he came on the third quarter. Malcolm Brogdon, it's inexplicable to me how a professional basketball player, especially one, we're talking about the sixth man of the year, someone who is as good as he is, cannot hit a layup to save his life. Stupid turnovers, often, from an innumerable number of guys. The pass just a hair too late by Jason Tatum at the end. You can get into the lack of timeout by Joe Mazzulla, the defensive decision by Jaylen Brown, rather, on Joel Embiid and allowing the three-pointer to James Harden. There are a lot of things to unpack. If I had a pillow, I would scream into it. Steve, I'm very frustrated about this thing, and I never feared it going 7 games, and now that it's a best of 3, very naturally, I do have that fear. How do you feel about what we've seen so far?
I think you need to get counseling. I'm worried about you.
Thank you. I appreciate the concern.
Talk to somebody. Get help.
So it's good to have friends who care. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Look, the Celtics, what they screwed up in the first half is what killed them at the end, basically. They shouldn't have been in that situation where a couple of mistakes cost them a game. They should have been playing a certain way earlier, and they didn't. And they had to figure that the Sixers were going to change something. And I remember tweeting out during Game 2 at the start how the big difference appeared to be Jaylen Brown picking up James Harden a couple feet outside the Sixers locker room. And that really screwed things up. And I was surprised that the Sixers allowed it to happen in Game 3 as well. And today, Game 4, the Sixers had somebody else bring up the ball most of the time. And instead of other people realizing, okay, if Jaylen Brown's not picking up the ball handler and harassing the hell out of him, maybe we got to do it. And, you've got to get into those guys and not let them get comfortable, not let them get downhill where they get you in defensive rotations. You want your rotations to be, I've got the passing lane, triangled off, and I'm going to step into it. That's the rotation and pick the ball off. But they didn't play with that kind of defensive intensity in the first half. And, they allowed some guys to get hot. They allowed Harden to get hot. Allowed him to get comfortable. It never should have happened. And how did they get back into the game? By making guys incredibly uncomfortable. The blocks, Al Horford was incredible. I mean, the block shots. Joel Embiid's the MVP of the league. Mm-hmm. And he looked foolish. Al Horford made him look foolish for a good part of that fourth quarter. But then, you make the mistake doubling off of James Harden when you already had another guy coming around to help with the double team there. So, the errors, and we're gonna wait until there's no time left to get a shot off. Crazy stuff.
Well, so can we drill down a little bit on something you're alluding to? And I think I'm oversimplifying this, but it is also just reality. James Harden goes off in game 1, you lose a tight game. You more than contain him in game 2, you win going away. You contain him again in game 3, and you win a game that was, tighter, but never overly stressful. And you lose a tightly contested game that you have to come back down 16 in game 4 when once again James Harden goes off. So the common denominator here obviously is James Harden great, you lose. Albeit close games, but you lose. James Harden, terrible, shooting 5 for 28 or whatever between 2 games, you win. How do they go about in game 5 getting that version or a subdued version of James Harden versus what we've seen in games 1 and 4?
Well, just because Harden, if he's not bringing the ball, it doesn't mean you shouldn't be on him like crazy. You should be on him before he gets the ball. You should make him have to work twice as hard as he did in the first half just for the catch alone. It was crazy. So that's huge right there, I think. And just with everybody, look, one thing, and look, referees make mistakes. I get that. But I think this whole thing that like these referees are incompetent, this stuff, I think that's a crock. I think these guys are good. But there's one thing that's always been true, and that is that the more aggressive team gets the benefit of the whistle. And it's physics in a lot of ways. If you're being more aggressive, that means you're moving forward, you're on the balls of your feet. It means the other team is on its heels to a degree, either literally or figuratively. They're not going to get calls. The more aggressive team sets the tone, gets the whistle. That's the way it is. And the Celtics were the more aggressive team in the fourth quarter, got themselves back in a game, got themselves a lead. When things are moving fast, the referees are like, should I call this? The ball's already going in the direction. It's hard to make those calls. Refereeing, I've written this before. It's like there's a blender going off and there's a bunch of stuff in it, and they drop you in the middle of that blender. That's the referee, and you got to pick out where the blueberry is. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous job, and you have to make it harder on them by playing faster defensively, by speeding the other team up, by not letting the Sixers get into their stuff, and not letting them, see the double team coming and beat your rotation with the pass. Just be more aggressive, get into guys, make their lives more difficult, make them flustered the way that the Celtics guys got flustered at different times, at critical times this game.
Ev, no one will ever confuse me for a professional athlete, and that was never in the cards, obviously. But it's a good thing because I could never do it. Watching that game, and I obviously wasn't out there on the floor. I'm not in the coaching staff. I'm in no way affiliated with the organization other than just covering them in this loose podcast sense and being a fan or whatever else. But watching that, I might like have a somewhat sleepless night. If I were actually on that team, I would not sleep for a week losing a game the way they lost tonight.
Well, they've done a lot of not sleeping and all this stuff after losing to the Warriors in the finals at home, I think. I don't think this is really anything super out of the ordinary for them. They've been in a lot of tough series over the past couple of years, pretty much since Tatum's got there, as my dog now chews a toy in front of me. I know it's adorable. But it's one of these things. They've been through a lot of stuff together. They've been through, a game 7 against LeBron James and, a bunch of threes don't go in and, the season doesn't go their way. Last year, obviously, losing to Steph at home the way they did, it's tough to come back from. That's the one thing I think about this team that I kind of respect is the mental toughness. And a lot of people don't think this team is mentally tough because of the way they seem to not take people seriously all the time. But I think today's game, and we're recording this on Sunday, you'll probably hear this mostly Monday. I think today's game is an example of the fact that they are a mentally tough team because they were down early. Nothing was going right. I think in terms of physicality, I think Philly did a great job. I don't think we're doing enough crediting Philly for coming out aggressive early, as Steve alluded to. the aggression of the fourth quarter for the Celtics, and the ball bounced their way a little bit more. But I thought Philly defensively in the first quarter, the first half was excellent, especially in the first quarter. They made it really uncomfortable for Boston to kind of get set, to run anything. Boston didn't get a lot of great looks, and even the good looks they got, they missed because they were out of rhythm and out of sync. So credit to Philly on that one. I think, look, this series has come out to the point where it's where everybody, kind of assumed it'd be. Everybody holds serve, kind of, right? There were 2-2 going back to Boston, and these are two pretty good teams. I mean, I am guilty probably more than most of not giving Philly the proper amount of respect, I guess. I've been one of the people that says I don't sweat Philly at all, and I probably still don't. But at the same time, I do have to give them credit for the way they came out and attacked this game. I mean, Boston, was out of sorts early and rallied late, but it wasn't enough. That's the thing with me about this game, Adam, is it's a 1-point game into the game. We could analyze every single possession at this point. Like, I thought there was a point in the fourth quarter, Malcolm Brogdon turned it over, and I was like, he was trying to split. He was trying to start like a fast break into the basket by himself, and he ended up giving it back to James Harden. I'm like, man, that's the one right there. That's going to be the one that kills this team, because at that point, momentum had gone a certain way. I mean, you can analyze everything at this point. I'm just,
16 from 22 from the free throw line. You could analyze that if you'd like.
Yeah, we could do a lot of stuff. And everybody's analyzing either the timeout or the double team at the end. But the beauty of this game is there's a lot more possessions than that. This team didn't execute as well in the first half as in the second half. They do a better job in the first half. This game's not going to overtime. So I think they're going to be ready for game 5, as everybody, I think, would assume. I think they have a good veteran-laden crew. It's not like they don't have guys in there that have been through this before. It's not great it's going back 2-2, but at the same time, like Adam, I feel pretty confident about this team going forward.
So that in mind, Steve, I'm skipping ahead, but what the hell? Best of 3. You're looking at it. If you were, I know you're not generally someone who's in the prediction making business, but if you were looking at it and saying, this is how this series is going to play out, game 4, game 5, game 6, potentially game 7, what do you think we're going to be looking at?
I think the way the Celtics approach games, once they get into them, makes it impossible to say with any kind of certainty what's going to happen. If the Celtics were mentally tough to the degree they need to be, they'd have another banner hanging, and they wouldn't have come out the way they did in the first half. Look, today, there's a difference between playing fast and getting rushed by the other team. Playing fast, where you're making the play, while you're playing with force and getting things, that's right there, huge. And look, in the first half, things could have changed significantly if the Celtics had made a few more wide open shots. Okay, they missed some wide open threes, and that could have churned things, because when you make a few shots, all of a sudden your energy seems to pick up defensively. You can't have your defensive energy be reliant on whether the ball is going through the strings for you or not. But it's a fact of life, especially with this team. I think we probably talked about it in the past, but there was a comment from Grant Williams this summer saying that the Celtics were more talented than the Warriors, but the Warriors are just more disciplined. Well, discipline's a talent. Discipline is something you have to have in your bag if you want to win. And, look, the Warriors after that series, they were like, yeah, we got into them and they folded up at critical times. And they were talking like that afterwards. They were saying it with a little bit of surprise and a little bit of swagger. This is private talk. So, this team has got to realize who they are, and they know what they look like when they're successful. The fact that they wouldn't do it every single minute of every single game is it's going to go down with the great mysteries of the world. We're going to be looking for that, and Sasquatch and Bigfoot and that Malaysian airplane and stuff too. It's who knows? I don't understand, and it's hard to understand it. And these guys know it, and everyone around the team knows it. You play the way you're supposed to. There's not a team in this league that should beat you.
I was saying to Evan just before we fired up the show, was watching the game, in real time, sort of the saving grace for me, or the thing that left me optimistic at halftime, even though they were down by 9 and had that late surge in the second quarter, was the fact that Jason Tatum hadn't done anything. And someone may hear that and say, well, what do you mean? If Jason Tatum had this, basically a Jaylen Brown-like first half, and both those guys were doing well, and maybe they weren't getting as much out of the complementary pieces or the bench or whatever, I'd be sitting there saying, man, they might be in trouble tonight because the two stars just aren't getting help. But when Jason Tatum does virtually nothing, at least offensively and statistically in that opening half, I was sitting there and saying, that's not going to last forever. He's going to get right. He's going to have a good second half. He's going to come out strong in the third quarter. Sure enough, he did. It dialed back a little bit in the fourth quarter. You could look at it and say statistically, he actually had a pretty good game. I know he didn't go for the 30 or 40 spot, but 18 rebounds and 6 assists. He had the 4 blocks. He was efficient from the field despite struggling from 3-point range. He didn't even hit a 3-pointer until the overtime, but he still shot basically 50% from the field overall. But what people are kind of left stung by is the fact that he did just come out with that slow start and couldn't seem to find a way, and kept getting either turning it over inside or getting blocked at the rim or whatever it was. There was no sort of rhythm for him. And a part of that obviously is a credit to the Sixers defense, as Evan acknowledged, but a part of it too is just, if we're going to talk about him as one of the best players in the league, which he is, a maybe perennial MVP candidate for years to come, 4th place this year and 4th or 5th place last year, whatever he was. What is it going to take for him to come out a little bit stronger in these games and have that, that Jason Tatum game that people like to talk about that he kind of did, in game 1 when he went for almost 40?
If he wants to produce more, and I've been carping on this for 3 years now, he's got to do a little less if he wants to achieve more. And by that, I mean, don't be up top with the ball. I mean, he should be running off picks and getting in position to catch and finish. They should be running him through a series of picks and making whoever's guarding him, have migraine headaches and, bruises on the side of their temples, whatever. They need to have him in a finisher's role. Catch and shoot, fake, beat the closeout guy, go to the bucket. They got him slashing a little bit in the second half. I think one of the first 2 plays was to get him going to the bucket, having him catch on the move is huge. Again, he is one of the best players in the league. Just because you see him every day and he misses a few shots, and people, the more you see somebody, I don't know why, but it tends to devalue them. Like, we think that Jimmy Butler is like, a golden basketball god because we see these highlights, whatever. We don't see him all year. If we did, you'd say, well, geez, why did Jimmy Butler go away in this game? Because I've watched him a lot. I love the guy. He's a great guy. I'm still pissed I lost a $5 bet to him on a Marquette versus University of Dayton women's volleyball NCAA tournament game. Not that I'm bitter, not at all. But seriously, so you see a guy all the time and you tend to devalue him for some crazy reason. But, when Jason is out front in the last possession of the game, looking around, it's like, no, you should be giving it up. And because if Jason Tatum cuts to the basket, it's not like he's not going to draw attention. He's going to force the Philadelphia defense to move. And if one guy moves slowly, or if someone goes to help when he cuts, someone's going to be open. And if he runs through the picks properly, and maybe you swing it to the guy who's open, and then everyone, the defense moves side to side, and there Jason is again to catch and finish. This stuff is simple, I think. Jason Tatum bringing the ball up, don't do it. And by the way, we've kind of glossed over one of the factors for early in this game, and that was Jaylen Brown getting a couple of quick fouls.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his defense, and it's not just, that I pointed it out early in that game too. The Sixers were saying that Jaylen Brown's defense, his defensive pressure, is what changed game 2. And again, it was the same in game 3. So him getting a couple of quick fouls didn't help at all. And he was off to the kind of game where, the Sixers are going to have to start helping on him and that's going to open other people up. So, a bunch of things went wrong there for them, but it's in their hands. I wish sometimes I wish that they weren't this good, because then we could look at ways they could try to trick this up and do this and do that. It's simple.
So that in mind, this is going to sound, I can't think of a way to phrase this question without it sounding stupid. So I'll just ask it. Going into the series, the belief, we certainly felt this way, and the odds makers felt this way, and I don't know if you did, you can tell us, but the belief was the Celtics were overwhelming favorites to beat the Sixers. Part of that was previous matchups, playoffs, or regular season, and sort of, being Embiid's daddy and all of that. Part of it, obviously, was the fact that you didn't know Embiid's injury situation. Will he even play in this series? And if he does, what's he going to look like? And on and on and on. Now it's tied at 2. Again, it's a best-of-3 series, and I want to say, are the Sixers live to win the series? Of course they are. It's a best-of-3. But do you really believe it? Because if we sit here and believe and harp on the fact that Boston is absolutely the better, the deeper, the more talented team, do you believe, or sort of what would go into Boston actually pissing this away?
The question is, what do they believe, really? The phrase I've used all year is, if you want to be elite, you can't act elitist. You can't play elitist. You have to grind. And if the Celtics come out on Tuesday night and are grinding and are just playing in the mud, playing defense like that, it's theirs. This series is, it's already gone too long in some regards. There shouldn't be a Tuesday. But you'll let it happen. So now it's how do you want to approach this? And obviously this is critical for them. Last year, they lose game 5 at home to the Bucks and go to Milwaukee and win. So, but you don't want to, whenever you leave yourself into that kind of situation, I call it a banana peel game. If you leave yourself into a game 7, you could slip on a banana peel, something crazy could happen. You're leaving all possibilities open. You want to take those possibilities off the table. You don't want to get involved in that. So how the Celtics come out, Horford said he was encouraged by the way the Celtics played at the end, but it's like they should be dope slapping themselves all the way back on the flight to Boston. How did we get here? How did we let this happen? Those other guys aren't bad, but if you look at the way the Celtics played defense toward the end, I'm not sure how many actual 24-second violations the Sixers got called for, but there were a couple that were de facto violations where they had to throw up a shot at the end that was never going to have a chance of going in. And that's what the kind of harassing defense can get you. And, that's what the Celtics need to do. Every possession. I mean, they've got the guys to do it. And if someone gets tired, come out. Use your depth more, That'd be great if guys were getting too tired from kicking the Sixers' butts and had to come out for a break. Send someone else in the game, work it that way. And then you'll have energy for offense. Move the ball quickly. The ball finds energy. You're not just walking it up and allowing the Sixers, who don't want to play that kind of up and down game, you're allowing them to rest. But if you sit back at all defensively, then you're allowing guys like Tyrese Maxey to get into the game, because now you're kind of reacting to the Sixers instead of forcing them where to go. And Maxey's a really good player, and they've kind of blunted him pretty well this series.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't know. I guess I would push back a little bit on, as I pull up a box score here, I would push back a little bit on the fact that, could they be up 4-0 and this be done and this series not get to Tuesday? I mean, yeah, sure. But at the same time, Philly is a 3 seed. They've had a great defense for at least most of the second half. I know Embiid's hurt. I'm not quite sure what to make about his particular injury at this point, because he seems to be okay. I mean, he's done a lot of damage, whether it's for an entire game or not. You could argue that, but he's been effective in certain spurts, so I'm not going to, clown on him for anything. But It's the 2 seed versus the 3 seed. I mean, if we're, I was very dismissive of Philly, and we'll continue to probably, do that privately. But I've been impressed with certain things. I've been impressed with some of what Harden has been able to pull off in games 1 and game 4. I thought game 1, he was just, I was like, man, is this a guy that maybe I wrote off too early? Is the whole thing where he goes to Houston, is there more validity to him actually leading a team in Houston versus him just going back to a city he likes? Then games 2 and 3 happened, and then tonight happens, and he was I was spectacular and hit the biggest shot of the game at the end of the game. I guess I feel like we're all misjudging Philly a little bit. Like there's not enough. Look at the talent discrepancy. There's no question. There are guys still playing the game, and they're tonight. I thought early on we're playing the game much harder than Boston was, and that was pretty much it.
So if that's the determinant, then how can you defend that the Sixers, if all it took was them playing harder than the Celtics, if you reverse that, is it a game?
That's fair. I'm just trying to figure out.
Or is it a close game?
I'm trying to figure out in terms of giving Philly the proper respect versus giving Boston the proper, tongue lashing that we keep doing it, in terms of like where does it end? You know what I mean? Like we have to give Boston, somewhat credit for coming back, but at the same time making bonehead plays at the end of the game throughout the fourth quarter. And at the same time, you have to credit Philly for playing hard and, coming up with certain, like, I don't know. I'm having a hard time talking myself through this series just because in the wins, it looks so good. And in the losses, it looks clunky, but at the same time, they still have a shot. Like, I know I guess I'm having a hard time, coming to some sort of inner peace about this series. Because again, at times it looks like Boston's way better. And at times, I don't know, Kaufman, we've had several text threads at this point with several different people where we have so many opinions coming in constantly, where I just feel like where we often blame Boston for blowing it. I just don't think we give Philly enough credit for executing in certain stretches. You know what I mean? I don't know.
They took advantage of what the Celtics weren't doing. So yeah, sure. And they hit some great shots. I mean, ridiculous shots. Mm-hmm. But look at, Embiid's your MVP. Look at what happened to him down the stretch. Look at what happened when he got crowded. And that was just, playing crazy rat defense on him, 1 for 6 in the fourth quarter. Your MVP was a -7 in the fourth quarter, 2 points, 1 rebound. Okay. That's what they did to Joel Embiid, the MVP in the fourth quarter.
Pretty impressive. No question.
It's like and I want to get to this part too. There's a difference between regular season basketball and postseason basketball. The difference between how the game gets played, and I'll give you 2 words to describe. Essentially, should tell you everything you need to know about regular season basketball versus postseason basketball. Ben Simmons. Okay, this guy. Oh, he makes a ton of money. I remember the first series the Celtics played against him. I'm watching him going, this guy's awful. His decision-making is terrible. And where did his numbers come from? Well, it was from Brett Brown and the pace that they played with in the regular season. Well, you get taken out of your pace now. You're not playing someone. You're not catching anyone on a back-to-back. Okay? They've got their rest. You're not catching a team not prepared for what you do. If you run a lot of zone, the Celtics, if they played the night before, aren't going to get a lot of work in against zone. So, but in a playoff series, sure, you're going to work on everything, on counters to everything the opponent does. So it's different, but a lot of it comes down to how hard you're willing to play. I was talking to a player's relative prior to game 1, and I said, if the Celtics extend the defense and take away shot clock on Philadelphia, that I think this is a quick series. Think about James Harden, just in particular. And what do you picture when you think James Harden? He's out front, dancing with the ball back and forth here, going there, this back and forth, and taking a it's not a Euro step backward. It would be I don't know, South America step backward. I don't know, whatever. That little 2-step backwards and hitting his stick. But that's after burning a bunch of clock. If you forced him to burn clock, bringing the ball up, or if someone else brings it up, as has happened today, you crowd him and play passing lanes on him and make it difficult for him to get the catch, you've taken away time that he needs to set up his dance, his shot, which is very effective. And it's, they'll give you the eyebrow flick and go to the bucket on you, all that stuff. But you need to cut down that time. And that happens by picking them up sooner. One of the reasons the Celtics lost the finals last year was you had, for some reason, Jason Tatum bringing the ball up against pressure, which is crazy. You need him to be giving it up, running up the court, and using his energy on that. Why was he so tired and fatigued by the end? You're having him do things he doesn't need to do. You had plenty of guys that could push the ball up the floor. Look at this year. I mean, sometimes the Celtic coaches look like third base coaches, running a guy home from second on a single to the, to short outfield. They're trying to push the ball. They're trying to get into stuff faster, because if the Celtics can play against a defense that isn't set, that isn't able to load up to its stars, then it's a huge advantage for them. Simple stuff. They know they've got to do it. They don't always do it. It's like, something, this game's too easy for us. We need to make it a little harder. It's like you're a golfer. Golf's not hard enough. I need to use a blindfold on 5 of my tee shots. Crazy.
As frustrated as we are to talk about a loss like the Celtics endured just a couple hours ago as we sit here in real time, and as Evan said, you might be listening on a Monday, we are thrilled to come at you twice a week, and that is in large part because of our great sponsors here on this show, Ev.
Yeah, our show, we'll take a quick break to tell you today's show is powered by FanDuel. Make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, just like Hoffman is currently doing and losing at an alarming rate, because it's up and down. It's up and down. It's a lot of down. Let's be real about it. Because right now, new customers going to get no sweat first bet up to $1,000. It's $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. As we look at FanDuel right now, I'm trying to get early odds on Game 5. Celtics -7 currently against the Sixers. If you're trying to get in early on some action, as I look at FanDuel right now, the -7, and if you parlay that with the Celtics in the first half, because they had the graphic on the screen. I'm not sure if either of you saw this, but I'm sure if you were. I think it was early in the third quarter they posted this particular stat about how much time Boston has spent leading the series versus the Sixers. The numbers were dramatic. I think they ride the ship at home. They covered the -7 and they win the first half. If you just parlay it together, it's +121. And that's just one very small bet of the cajillion bets you can make on FanDuel. And so easy to use with the app right on your phones. I promise you. How many times I've been walking the dog, all of a sudden the same game parlay pops into my head. I can take my phone out of my pocket, pause the podcast, throw something in, and we're all set. We got action on the game for later. There's great promotions every day. It's safe, secure, easy to use, and you get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. It is FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/Boston to get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
I was scanning Twitter a little bit just as we've talked through all the different points of this thing. I'm not even sure, maybe I have and I don't remember. I'm not sure I've even mentioned the name Joe Mazzulla yet during this show, in part because and I always, we talk about this every show, Evan, but I always think that there's over criticizing of the coach from fans just in general, whatever the market. Certainly happens in Boston and has for a long period of time. It's a default complaint is, something goes wrong with the players, blame the coach. Happens all the time. But Steve, I am wondering, as I scroll through Twitter, and I'm not even talking about my mentions, I'm talking about media writing about this game, the umbrella that is media. A pretty common denominator is, why the hell didn't Joe Mazzulla call a timeout at the end of that game? Is it something that you had a problem with as you were watching?
End of the regulation or
Overtime.
Overtime.
Yeah.
It was all in front of them. I mean, should he call it? You could say, yeah, you want to call a timeout and reset because you just had a big shot hit on you. You just screwed up a play defensively. Maybe you want to gather yourselves. Fair. But in terms of what happened, you call a timeout and say, okay, look, here's what we're going to do, which they already knew what they were going to do offensively. But by the way, as you're walking out to the court, Jason, don't wait until there's 6 seconds left to do something. I mean, what's they had the end of regulation, they had a wide open shot to win it, and, you can say Marcus Smart, but the shot was there,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It was funny. I was talking to Joe's wife after one of the games in Boston. And I said, I think it was after the second game. And I said, if I want to find out who wins the game, I don't even have to go to the game. I don't even have to watch. I can just look at my emails in the morning. And it's like, but who is getting killed? What Joe needs to realize is that everybody before him has gotten killed. I mean, Doc Rivers, how many people were bitching to get him out of here, right, before he won? Right? I mean, okay, Brad Stevens, how much heat did Brad Stevens?
Also after he won. But go on.
Okay, how much heat did Brad Stevens take?
Sure.
You know what I mean? And the stuff that Joe does is stuff that other coaches who are Hall of Fame coaches have done. The not calling timeout thing, and we probably told the story before, but Phil Jackson, that would happen all the time, where someone would make a run on the Lakers, and his assistant coach, is a close friend of mine, Frank Hamlin, rest in peace, my brother. But he would say, where he'd turn to Phil and say, we call a timeout, and Phil, in his little more flowery language, would say essentially, they got themselves into this, let them get themselves out of it. And I thought that was a great strategy during the year for the Celtics to not have them look over their shoulders, say, look, you know what to do, bail yourselves out here. If the shot goes in, no one's asking that question, right? If the shot gets off in time, no one's asking. Well, it's a brilliant strategy.
Yeah, because it went in.
He didn't let them set up their defense.
Yeah.
But that's the problem, though, with that. That's the thing. There was a lot of time on the clock. They should have gone a little slightly earlier, but it's not like, they had 19 seconds left to start.
And didn't get a shot off. Officially speaking, did not get a shot off, which is inexcusable.
That's got to start
That's what got
earlier.
Mike Budenholzer fired, right? Well, that was different. He needed to call a timeout to advance the ball.
Right.
They had a lot less time. I shouldn't compare the two.
To be fair, though, they had to start a little bit earlier, but they still had to kill a clock. I don't, some people
Yes
are
and
they
no.
should have gone faster. And I'm like, well, but if you go too fast, then you give Philly a chance at rebuttal here. So I understand trying to.
You should have gone faster, because if you don't score, you foul, and Philly, if they hit both, they're up by 3.
Yeah.
You still have another bite at the apple.
Right.
Or maybe you miss and you get a chance at the rebound.
Sure. I mean, exactly. Or if you miss and Philadelphia goes down and Philadelphia misses, you get the ball back with,
Right.
down 1 instead of that, But it's funny. I'm sure I've told this before. A few hours before Game 7, 2010 against the Lakers, which is funny. It goes back to everybody thinks that Ainge was feeding me stuff, and it's like, no, he's the GM of the team I cover. Back then, I was covering that team. I'm going to talk to him as much as I can.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, he was sitting courtside, and he said, what's funny is that after this game, one team is going to have everything figured out, and people are going to be fitting them for a dynasty. And the other team is going to go back to the drawing board and rethink everything. He goes, and we're here right now. They're going to throw the ball up in a short while, and we don't know which team is which right now. So much of the narrative gets built on, does this shot go down? Does this shot not go down? I mean, if Kevin Garnett posts up in the fourth quarter of that game, the Celtics have another banner, another ring, and that grouping, that big three grouping, is looked at as a huge success instead of looking at it as, oh, if only they never quite reached the potential that they had. It's crazy, but that's, so I'd rather look at things that are larger than whether this shot went down or didn't, and look at, okay, how did you get to that spot? How did you get to the spot where where the game was tied and you needed a bucket to win in regulation? Or you got the game, you're down by a point and you needed to score at the end. Well, what were the factors that got you? And I go back to what we said earlier. The way you played, you played like you were supposed to get yourself back into the game, to get back from a double-figure deficit. But, you shouldn't have been there.
So expectations for Game 5. Evan, we heard him earlier, to take the points, take them in the first half. We'd all love this to be a curb stomping like it was in Game 2. That's probably unrealistic, but who knows? Garden crowd, everyone's lively. Maybe it's a Tatum game, yada, yada, yada. What do you expect? Is this going to be a comfortable win for Boston? Are you even confident it will be a win for Boston?
I don't expect anything. Seriously, I don't. It's like I don't have that attachment to it. I want to see what happens. That's my curiosity is like, okay, how are you going to come out? How are you going to play? Are you going to come out like you did in Game 1 when the crowd was all there then, and all of a sudden, like, you let it slip away? How could you let that happen? So I learn not to expect anything. I'm not rooting anyway, one way or the other. So it's like, yeah, let's see.
Yeah, maybe I should be a little less confident, but given the way the series has gone, and I'm feeling that that Boston understands that. I mean, given the quotes after the game, I was actually pretty impressed. I don't know if you guys saw this and how quickly Jalen kind of owned the mistake at the end of the game of being like, I tried to double when I shouldn't have, tried to make a play. Credit to Embiid for making the pass, credit to Harden for making the shot, but I shouldn't have done that. Like, I feel like this team has a good understanding of, okay, well, this one slipped away. We need to do something better in Game 5. But again, to your point, Steve, talk is cheap, and we'll see what happens when they roll the ball up or throw it up in the air. But I don't know. I trust this team's ability to respond, and they've done that so far. We'll see. Again, the problem is, as we all sit here, is they're somewhat lackadaisical tendencies to come out and misjudge their opponent and misunderstand their opponent. But I think Boston's got a good idea at this point of what they can do. This is the thing that I love about this series is, and they talk about, Mark Jones talks about it often whenever he's on the game. I feel like it's the storyline of, this is the most played, rivalry in NBA, playoff history. These two teams have met the most times. I think it's just interesting that these two teams specifically, versions of them, have met a ton. Like Boston and Embiid have this huge history of games together. Embiid got a second win all time in the playoffs against the Celtics while he's played. Obviously didn't play in Game 1, so I don't know if we want to count that, but if you want to, there's 3. But he hasn't had a ton of success against Boston this year, his career. So it's not like if I'm Philly, I'm feeling super confident. It hasn't been a lot of winning. Boston's been on top a lot more, that's for sure. So I don't know. I guess I need to check myself maybe Tuesday afternoon and say, hey, maybe we need to give Philly a little more respect.
It's like the big thing is, like, have they learned their lesson? It starts sounding like Senator Collins from Maine.
Oh boy,
learned the lesson this time. No, not really. After Game 2, I talked to Marcus Smart aside, and I encourage you to read the story. Find the story, read it. And like I said to him, I said, look, are you a little worried that you guys are gonna, you had this huge success in Game 2, that you're gonna fall back to your old habits again? It's like, no, I'm not even a little worried. He goes, am I aware? Yes. And then we got into the routine, and he picked up on it, which I give him infinite credit for. I said, it's like that Three Stooges episode where Larry says, that he's not, Mo asks if he's scared. And Larry says, no, I'm not scared. I'm apprehensive. And Mo said, that's a pretty big word. What does it mean? And Larry says, it means you're scared with a college education. And I started to say it Marcus picked it right up, and they're aware of what they do. They're aware of this stuff. They should have learned their lesson. Did they learn it when they had a chance to go up 3-1 against the Warriors in the NBA Finals? Should have learned it. Should have learned it back in 2018 when they had the Cavaliers in Boston, Game 7, Conference Finals. They should have learned the lesson then. They should have learned it in 19. Should have learned it in 20. 21 was a mess. But they go away from what they do best, and they pay for it.
So, last thing for me, in the spirit of apprehension versus scared, I will ask you something that is not a prediction, but I do want a feeling. I was talking to Sean about this the other day. We both believed at the time, I would say probably still believe, I believe, the winner of this series will represent the East in the NBA Finals. That sounds like I'm just completely overlooking the Knicks or Heat. I'm not. I just think that these two teams are better than the Knicks and Heat. Do you believe that the winner of this series will be in the NBA Finals, or do you give that other side of the bracket a little more credit than I am?
I believe if the Celtics win this series, that they should be in the NBA Finals. I mean, look, I thought that before the playoffs started, I thought they should be in the NBA Finals.
Mm-hmm.
If it's Philadelphia and New York or Miami, wow, you got a lot of weird stuff that's going to get into that one. I mean, I think that could be a real strange series. With the Heat are so Butler reliant. The Knicks are so Jalen Brunson reliant. What happens if they go, defensively, I'm not sure that the Sixers have the ability to muster forces like they need to. Because even today, you look at what hurt the Celtic offense, and it was, a lot of themselves, a lot of missing some wide open shots. So, I don't know. I would say Celtics, but I wouldn't tell you if the Celtics somehow find a way to lose this series, which I still find it hard to believe, but certainly the possibilities are there.
I'm worried about the banana peel game, Steve.
Yeah, well, there you go. Or hey, last year it told you what you needed to know about the Celtics' capabilities when they went into Milwaukee and Tatum went crazy.
Yep.
And they won Game 6. They've got this ability, and anyway.
Ev, anything less from you?
Terrified of Jimmy Butler constantly. That guy, I have the most respect for Jimmy Butler. I think of
serious PTSD around here.
That guy's awesome. That guy is awesome. I love him. Man, just a bunch of respect to Jimmy Butler. I'm way up on my list.
But if you're the Celtics and you get him in the playoff series, and you just crowd the living hell out of him, then
it might not matter. Finds a way.
No, but it helps. There's no hero this time around.
Right, but they've got the guy the Celtics kept gave away instead of Javante.
Yeah, I mean, some of their role players just seem to have a game. Like whether it's Caleb Martin or
if we wind up,
I mean, one a game goes off. I mean, then there's Bam, who's
isn't Sam Hauser like a perfect Miami Heat shooter?
Sure.
I mean, he's the kind of guy that would be like a star on Miami. They'd be posters up and all that stuff. Which they don't.
No, if we get the opportunity to preview a Boston-Miami conference finals, I absolutely will have my riff at some point about fearing the Max Strus 30-point game that will be inevitable when they steal a game that way. It's just but hopefully we can even get to that point. That's just us, having fun, looking ahead and all that. What we need to do right now is look ahead to Tuesday night, and that is back in Boston. That's Game 5, 7:30, and we do not have times for Games 6 and if necessary 7 just yet. Of course, 6 will be Thursday in Philadelphia. 7 would be Sunday.
To see if I've got anything from the league yet. And I do not.
Okay.
But
they give him a couple of days off.
But I can tell you that you will be getting a tweet giving you the Sultan of Stats offerings from today's game.
Oh, there we go.
Just received that. So, I mean, this, look, Celtics lost today. Red Sox lost today. Some
screwed
people
up the Boston parlay.
Some people lost some money, playing online betting. But there is some reason to live, and it's that the Sultan of Stat, Dick Blipe, will be providing his goodness from my Twitter account about 5 minutes after we finish with this mess.
I do look forward to that. Once again, great sponsors of ours, Evan, that allow us to do this show a couple of times a week, and we will continue to getting into next week as well. I guess probably if I were to guess, don't hold me to it, viewer, listener, I appreciate you. Say probably Wednesday feels like a good time, right after, dive back into this thing after Game 5 and see how we're feeling at that point in time. And I hope we're feeling really good, but we'll see.
I think the way to be able to tell this, again, if someone out there is like watches this on YouTube or whatever it is, where do they get this? Yeah,
YouTube, Twitter, wherever.
Don't watch the game. Just turn on this podcast on Wednesday, and if Evan's receiving oxygen, it's not good news.
Yeah, that's right.
If I open the show screaming into a pillow. Yeah, no, it's true. All right. Well, Steve, thank you as always for hopping on with us. I am certain we will bug you again throughout the playoffs, hopefully to talk Boston, otherwise other series going on, but ideally Boston. And, you've been such a good friend of this program, obviously. We will continue to check out all of your work over at Heavy and make sure you're following him on Twitter, folks, as we always tell you to do, obviously, because there's just great Celtics and overall NBA insights over there on Heavy from one Steve Bulpett and our good friend Sean Devaney as well, who joined us on the last show.
Evan, can you give me like a little reader for my Steve B. Hoop Twitter account? I know I'm not FanDuel, I'm not paying you, but
I mean,
how about a little something for the effort, Llama?
All I'm saying is, if you want the most comprehensive coverage besides CLNS Media, Steve B. Hoop on Twitter is a good one. That's all I'm going to tell you. Look, Steve, your reputation at this point speaks for yourself. I mean, at a certain point,
let's leave reputation out of this.
I would just tell you that at a certain point in coverage, you were the godfather of the Celtics beat, and it was just whatever you came out with was it. So,
I no longer have
like achieving that status.
Pardon me?
Was it like achieving that status as a beat writer of being the go-to voice that everybody, like, if once Steve says it, it's that's what it is, that's
it's true. There was, I hope I think I've talked to you about it. There was a, because of you made the joke earlier, but because of the reputation of like Danny Ainge is feeding Steve, because of that, during all those 15 whatever years that Danny was here, especially those years that you were at the Herald, it was like Woj would come out with a tweet or whomever, Windhorst or Shams or like all these national guys, Spears would be like, oh, all right, but has Steve written about it yet? What has Steve said?
Yeah.
What's funny is I never really clapped back at it when people would say stuff like that, because I knew that it's like the cell. And I've talked to Dominique about this in the last series, how he said, if the old garden that Red Auerbach made their dressing room hotter and the showers cold.
Yeah.
It was the same way in the Celtics locker room, but they just wanted, they never said anything about it because they wanted you to think they were screwing you over. And it's like Ainge, I've known him since I started on the beat in '85 and would talk to him, but he talked to everybody. But the people would say that he was giving me stuff, and I never said anything against it. It wasn't true, but I never said anything against it because I knew that it was pissing other people off.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, let him be pissed and think that's where I'm getting it from, and I'm not.
Yeah.
I had a couple of knockdown, drag out brawls with Ainge because he wouldn't tell me something. It's like, geez.
That's what we got to get into next time, is what are the stuff that you wanted Ainge to tell you that he didn't tell? We'll get into
everything. I want everyone to tell me everything.
Yeah.
Funny thing, this came up with a friend recently. So that whole reputation of that, crazy. I talked to everybody, other teams. That's where other teams didn't like the Celtics.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where they'd talk to you about the Celtics. It's a good little hint there. If you want to get something about somebody, talk to the people that don't like them or that are,
Good life lesson, actually.
That's
There
right.
you go. So a bunch of years ago, it was, I can tell you exactly what year it was. It was the summer of 2007. And the Celtics were at Summer League. We're out in Vegas, and Celtics were practicing at some high school. And it's like, Ainge goes, Steve, come here, I gotta tell you something. And it's like, freaking finally, he's gonna drop something on me. And he gets to the side, he goes, I go, what, Danny, what? He goes, I gotta tell you, Rondo is really good. It's like, you jerk.
Well, he was right.
That was Rondo going into his second year. It's like, Doc wanted Ainge to get him a veteran point guard, and Danny wouldn't because he wanted to force Doc to play Rondo. And it's like, you brung me over here, you got me all excited, and that's what you're going to tell me?
To his credit, Rondo was good.
As the future captain of the Boston Celtics at the time.
I mean,
Yeah.
But that's. I'm not sure we got to that point in this discussion.
It's praising your Twitter feed, Steve. That's all it was all about.
Yeah.
Give you your disclaimer. We got about 5 minutes out of it. We got more than the
there you go.
FanDuel disclaimer.
So the beat is the beat. It was great being on the beat for all those years, but it wasn't a healthy lifestyle. I'll put it that way.
Never is.
I'm like about 30 pounds lighter now, and eating properly, and stuff works on my body now. And at least I'll tell this story, and it wasn't really so much a joke. That my primary care physician at Mass General wanted me off the beat worse than the Rears did. Every time I go in, it's like, so anything else working for you? Anything else? Any other opportunities come up?
Any job changes on the horizon here, Steve?
He was not happy with, the 75 straight days working during playoffs. Anyway.
And that in mind, basketball every night in the playoffs.
About this stuff here now. Let's go, yeah.
For Steve Bulpett, Evan Valenti, I'm Adam Kaufman. Celtics beat twice a week on the CLNS Media Network. Join us, find us on Twitter, wherever you get your podcasts, obviously. Rate, review, subscribe on Apple. You can get us on YouTube. Comment there. We always appreciate it. We'll talk to you again next time, hopefully after a Game 5 win.